A new engine had arrived on the island. He was going to help take the vacationers up into the mountains. Thomas had arrived at the transfer yards. He was very excited to meet the new engine. "Hello," the new engine puffed back. "I'm Mighty."
"And I'm Mac."
And together, we're Mighty Mac, they whistled happily. Then the narrow gauge controller, Mr. Percival, arrived. Mighty Mac could see the vacationers. They were waiting on the platform. Mighty Mac didn't know how to get to the platform. "We've always worked in the shunting yard," moaned Mighty to Thomas. "How will we find our way over to the passengers?" groaned Mac. "It's simple," whistled Thomas. Mighty set off nervously. But as they puffed along the track, "This way," he said. "No, Mac," puffed Mighty. "It's this way." Soon they were puffing left and right, backwards and forwards. They were very confused. They even had a ride on the turntable. Then, at last, "We're here," puffed Mac. "Then why are the vacationers over there? Now you're late." "Sorry," said Mac. "Sorry," said Mighty. They felt very silly. Finally, the passengers were on board. Mighty Mac puffed through the countryside on the way to the campground. "We have to get there before dark," chuffed Mighty. "So we'll have to work extra hard." Then, in the mountains, there was a fork in the track. Mighty wanted to go left. "This way," he puffed. "Go the other way," shouted Mac. But Mighty was already pulling them past the fork. Mac was cross. The next time they came to a fork in the track, Mac wanted to go the other way again. "This way," he puffed, and he junctioned, and then pushed him back up the other line. Now Mighty was cross, and whenever they came across a junction, Mighty would push one way, then Mac would pull the other. The vacationers were having a very bumpy ride, but Mighty Mac pressed on. Then there was trouble. They had arrived at a dead end. "This isn't the campground." "This is your fault," puffed Mighty, and he pushed back towards Mac. "Yours," huffed Mac, and he pushed back even harder. The vacationers watched as Mighty Mac bumped backwards and forwards. But it was too late, and the coach crashed into the rocks. And it was all Mighty Mac's fault. They felt terrible. The vacationers were working hard. "When the vacationers work together," hooted Mighty. "They lifted the heavy carriage onto the track," tooted Mac. "If we both work together," puffed Mighty, "we'll be strong enough to push those rocks out of the way," huffed Mac. So Mighty Mac rolled up to the rocks and pushed and pushed. The rocks rumbled, and then they rocked until finally the track was clear. Mighty Mac was ready to go. "Look where you want to go," puffed Mac. "Then follow the track that will take you there," chuffed Mighty. "Off we go," they whistled together. Mighty Mac puffed up the mountains, and soon they arrived at the campground. "You know, Mac," wheezed Mighty, "when we pull together and work together, we can be a very useful engine," whistled Mac. And they set off happily back down the mountain. Engines of the narrow gauge railway were always busy. Rheneas chuffed cheerfully through the mountains. The engines had to work extra hard, pulling heavy coal cars up and down the long, steep track. Duncan and the old mine. It was his favorite place is a pretty village high up in the mountains. Later, Sir Handel was helped back to the transfer yards by Mighty Mac. He was sure that the narrow gauge controller was going to send him back to the quarry. Sir Handel arrived at the transfer yards. "The bell will come loose," puffed Mighty Mac. But still, Duncan didn't listen. Mighty Mac was taking vacationers to the mountains. It was summer on the island of Sodor. Duncan's Bluff. It was... Rheneas arrived at the transfer yards. Sir Handel, Mighty Mac, and Rusty were there. He told them all about his surprise. The other engines were happy to help. Thank you for a grand time, puffed Duncan. The roads really are as much fun as the rails. All over the little engines. There are many railway tracks that the little narrow gauge engines run on. Up ahead, Sir Handel found Mighty Mac. He was helping workmen to lay new track. "We can pull a heavy train," wheezed Mighty. "We're very strong," whistled Mac, and he steamed off. Finally, Sir Handel found Mighty Mac. "We can pull the heavy lumber train to the transfer yards," wheezed Mighty. "We're the strongest," whistled Mac, and they steamed off. Now everyone was working. Later at the transfer yards, one morning, Freddie, Peter Sam, and Mighty Mac were at the wharf. They were very excited. Sam and Mighty Mac didn't know where to find one, so they looked at Freddie. So he puffed quickly out of the wharf. Just then, Mighty Mac puffed up. "Cows aren't taking any notice at all," huffed Mighty Mac. "That'll never do for a bicycle bell," he chuffed. And he chuffed quickly on his way. Freddie arrived at the wharf. He could see Peter Sam, Mighty Mac, and James. They were waiting for him. Peter Sam, Mighty Mac, and James heard the clatter and rushed over.
Can fit us, Freddie, Mighty Mac.
First, James in front found Mighty Mac at a crossing. "Thomas has discovered a hidden town," she hooted loudly. Mac told Sir Handel. At the depot, Mr. Percival gathered his engines. Mr. Percival cheered. And cried. Then
one morning, Peter Sam puffed into the transfer. All the little engines whistled and wheeshed. Then the narrow gauge controller arrived. He gave them all special jobs. The little engines peeped their whistles excitedly. He still had to pick up flowers for the show. "Thank you!" And Mighty Mac chuffed off. Then Peter Sam heard the whistles of his friends. Duncan, Freddie, and Mighty Mac arrived at the junction. He told them about finding the statue of Proteus. The engines gasped. Mighty Mac puffed to tell Mr. Percival about the statue. The engines whistled. "We are all stars of the show." All the other engines were waiting at the wall. "Off we go!" they whistled together.